Hare Krishna. Jai Meena Mataji, Hare Krishna. Jai, Jai, Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribhajakacharya Ashtottara Satashri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Ganga Mayi ki jai. Jamuna Mayi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone for a Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. Maharaj hasn't shown up yet, but I expect him to since I haven't heard from him. To the contrary. It is Friday, June 14th, 2024 in New York. And tonight we're reading in the third canto, chapter 32, where we left off last was on text 26, which has a very long purport. Madhupati Prabhu read it all. We didn't get much time to discuss, but I also noticed that not only at the end of Wednesday's session did we have numerous items in the chat box that were unresolved, unread, but also Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has an extensive purport on that text 26 that we didn't even begin to look at since Prabhupada's purport itself was so extensive. So let's see here. I wanted to read, well, I'm waiting to see, okay, Saraswati Mata is here. There were a couple of things that happened in the chat box that I wanted to bring out first of all before we pick up where we left off. Going back just a little bit, there was a topic that came up towards the end of the last class on the subject of dreaming, that the Jiva soul is dreaming in material existence, and that Mahavishnu is also, in his own way, in his transcendental way, dreaming. And Tulsi Priya had brought out a comment from the fourth canto, chapter 29, right on this direct point, which I'll read first. Etad adhyatma paroksham gitam devarshananagha yashravayet yasrinuyat salingena vimuchyate. My dear Vidura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence, as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. And Prabhupada says, this material creation is the spirit soul's dream. Actually, all existence in the material world is a dream of Mahavishnu, as the Brahma Samhita describes, Yakara narnava jale bhajati sma yoga nidram ananta jagaranda saromakupaha. This material world is created by the dreaming of Mahavishnu. The real factual platform is the spiritual world. But when the spirit soul wants to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is put into this dreamland of material creation. After being in contact with the material modes of nature, the living entity develops the subtle and gross bodies. When the living entity is fortunate enough to associate with Sri Narada Mahamuni or his servants, he is liberated from this dreamland of material creation and the bodily conception of life. So that's as pertains to the dreaming condition, ours and Mahavishnu's. And Maharaj hasn't shown up yet, but this next bit was submitted by Panchatattva Prabhu on the same point of dreaming. And this is from a room conversation in November of 1977, Prabhupada is in his bed, and Panchatattva Prabhu prefaces it thus: a sweet exchange between His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, then Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, and Srila Prabhupada near the end of Prabhupada's manifest pastimes. I'll read it as it sits. Jayadvaita: Bajaj is just burdening the world with motorcycles, and you're providing the highest subject matter for hearing and chanting. So he says this to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, where there is need of money, send there. I mean to say, just like Africa and other backwards, I am simply dreaming, and you are actually on the field. Tamal Krishna says, we are actually what? Brahmananda clarifies, on the field. Tamal Krishna, yes, but that's because we're in your dreams. If you weren't dreaming like this, we would be on the material field. Jayadvaita: it's like Mahavishnu is lying down. The whole material world is being expanded by his dreaming. So you're lying down here, and the whole ISKCON activities are being expanded by your dreaming. Prabhupada chuckles. Pause. Room conversation, November 3rd, 1977, Vrindavan, India. So he's not here to thank, but thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. And I hope this brings that topic of dreaming into better focus for those who are discussing it last. And I was going to ask, is Radhesha Prabhu? No, he's not here right now. Oh, alas. I was going to say there's like I said, an extensive purport by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti on this verse 26. And just because I feel like we're catching up a lot from before, and because Maharaj hasn't shown up yet, and I was waiting for Radhesha Prabhu also to show up, I will read this because I think I may be the only one who has it in his face right now. So this is the verse that we read before. This is Prabhupada's translation. I won't read his purport again, but this is text 26 from the 32nd chapter, which we're on. Jnanamatram parang brahma paramatmeshvara puman drishyadibihi pritag bhavair bhagavan eka iyate. And Prabhupada's translation here: the Supreme Personality of Godhead alone is complete transcendental knowledge, but according to the different processes of understanding, he appears differently, either as impersonal Brahman, as Paramatma, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or as the Purusha avatar. And Srila Vishwanath's verses: the one form of Bhagavan, also perceived as Brahman, consciousness alone, and as Paramatma, the Purusha, by differing practices performed by different practitioners. And in his commentary, he says, in the chapter on Bhakti Yoga, what he's referring to is the previous chapter from this same canto where Kapila Dev is describing Bhakti Yoga. It is said, Pashyanti me ruchiranyam vasantaha prasana vaktraru nalochanani rupani divyani varapradani sakam vacham sprihaniyam vadanti. O mother, the devotees see my attractive red eyes in my smiling face and my spiritual forms which bestow blessings. They speak pleasing words with me. That's from chapter 25. And Srila Vishwanath says, from this, it can be seen that the result of bhakti is to be the Lord's associate, filled with prema in the Lord's abode. In the chapter on jnana or jnana, it has been said, Mad bhakta pratibudharto mat prasadena bhuyasa nishrayasang svasangstanam kaivalyakyam madashrayam. Becoming my devotee, understanding the ultimate truth, by my bountiful mercy, he easily attains the highest benefit, his Svarupa, called Brahman, which is under my shelter. That's from chapter 27. And Srila Vishwanath says now, the result of jnana is merging in Brahman. In the chapter on Ashtanga Yoga, it has been said, Muktashrayam yari nirvishayam viraktam nirvanam richchiti manasabasa yatarchihi atmana matcha purusho vyavadhanamekam anvikshate pratinivritta guna pravaha. When the mind of the perfect yogi becomes devoid of material objects under the shelter of the Lord and detached from all material objects, the mind suddenly gets destroyed, just as a flame dies without oil and wick. The jiva, having destroyed misconceptions of his body, then sees his atma without coverings. That's from chapter 28 of this canto. And back to our commentator, the result of yoga is merely liberation by jnana and vairagya. In verse 22 and 23 of this chapter, it is said that all the results of bhakti, jnana, and yoga are achieved by performing bhakti alone. This is also stated in the following verses. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. That's quoting second canto, chapter 3. The person desiring destruction of all desires, the person with all desires, even the person with the intense desire for liberation, if he has good intelligence, will worship the Supreme Lord with pure bhakti. And then he quotes 11th canto, chapter 20, Yat karma bir yat tapasa jnana vairagya tascha yat yogena dana dharmena shreyobhir itarair api sarvang madbhakti yogena madbhakto labate jasa svarga pavarga madhama katanshid yadivanshati. So this is Srila Vishwanath is quoting 11th canto. So he has a lot to say here. Everything that can be achieved by karma, penance, jnana, vairagya, mystic yoga, charity, dharma, and all other auspicious means of perfecting life is easily achieved by my devotee through bhakti. If somehow or other my devotee desires svarga, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily achieves such benedictions. What is the logic behind this? The present verse answers. The one Bhagavan, full of 6 auspicious qualities, the Lord of Vaikuntha, is perceived as different forms by different worshippers, bhavai, with different sadhanas, such as jnana, drishihi, or drishyadibhi. Now he gets into some Sanskrit commentary. Instead of iyate, perceived, sometimes iryate, is called, is seen. Drishyadibhi can also mean with visible drishya and invisible adrishya svarupas. Hare Krishna. The quality of the Parabrahman is pure consciousness alone. Hare Krishna. My obeisances to Maharaj. I saw that he just arrived. I just wanted to let you know, Maharaj, that we're now going through, because we didn't have the time to do so on Wednesday. I'm in the middle of reading Srila Vishwanath's commentary on the verse we finished with. I'm sorry?
I've been following for a little while now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't peek over to the screen.
I'm sorry. That's all right.
He had such a long purport. I thought it was worth sharing.
Absolutely.
Aha. Yes, the quality of the Parabrahman is pure consciousness alone, jnana matram. Quality of Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, Ishvara Puman. Because Bhagavan contains both Brahman and Paramatma, by bhakti as sadhana to the Bhagavan, one achieves the perfection of bhakti, sadhya, to Bhagavan, being the Lord's associate, full of prema, and as well one attains merging with the Lord, the perfection of jnana and yoga. On the other hand, by practicing jnana for Brahman or yoga for Paramatma, one does not attain the position of an associate of the Lord with prema, for this is nowhere stated in scriptures. Because of the formlessness of Brahman, it is said to be invisible, adrishya, and because Paramatma also has a formless feature, he is also said to be invisible. According to some authorities, worshippers of Paramatma realize a visible form of the Lord, since that is described in the Shruti, such as Purusha Sukta, and in the Bhagavatam. Kechit svadehantar hridayavakashe pradeshamatrang purushang vasantam chaturbhujam kanjaratanga shankha gadadharang dharanaya smaranti. This is second canto Bhagavatam. Some yogis meditate upon the Paramatma, measuring one pradesha, who is residing in the heart within the body, and who holds the lotus, wheel, conch, and club in his four hands. Back to Srila Vishwanath. Because Bhagavan is both Brahman and Paramatma, he is said to be invisible adrishya. When the Lord becomes visible as avatar, he is both visible and invisible, since he contains Brahman and Paramatma. It is said in the Vishnu Purana 1-55, Prakritang Brahma Rupasya Vishno Stanam Anutamam Tatra Vyakta Svarupo So Vyakta Rupo Jagatpatihi Vishnu Brahma Svarupena Swayam Eva Vyavastitaha. Vishnu in the form of Brahman, the invisible form, is inferior. The Lord of the universe also has a superior visible form. He is situated as both Vishnu and Brahman. Anutamam means inferior. Thus, the invisible form of Brahman is lower, and the visible form is superior. Hare Krishna. So, is there anything you'd care to add to all that, Maharaj?
There's so much there. How can I add?
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you were here when I read our previous submission to the chat box from our last class that contained some elements of the discussion on the dreaming of the Mahavishnu versus the dreaming of the Jiva soul. But Panchatattva Prabhu had posted something, a excerpt from a room conversation in Vrindavan in November of 1977, in which you were a participant. Prabhupada is lying there, and you say to Prabhupada, it's like Mahavishnu is lying down. The whole material world is being expanded by his dreaming. So you are lying down here, and the whole ISKCON activities are being expanded by your dreaming. And Prabhupada laughed. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So now we are up to date, so to speak. We can pick up where we left off now, starting with text number 27 in our chapter 32. Yes. And I was going to see if, let's see here. Yes, I was going to give myself a break from reading whether Gurudas Prabhu would like to read this verse, text 27, if that's possible. Or I could conceivably keep going. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So text 27 now. Etavan eva yogena samagrene yoginaha yujyate bhimato hyarto Yada sangastu kritsnashaha. The greatest common understanding for all yogis is complete detachment from matter, which can be achieved by different kinds of yoga. There are three kinds of yoga, namely Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga. Devotees, jnanis, and yogis all try to get out of the material entanglement. The jnanis try to detach their sensual activities from material engagement. The jnana yogi thinks that matter is false and that Brahman is truth. Therefore, by cultivation of knowledge, he tries to detach the senses from material enjoyment. The Ashtanga yogis also try to control the senses. The devotees, however, try to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. Therefore, it appears that the activities of the bhaktas, devotees, are better than those of the jnanis and yogis. The mystic yogis simply try to control the senses by practicing the 8 divisions of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, etc. And the jnanis try, by mental reasoning, to understand that sense enjoyment is false. But the easiest and most direct process is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. The purpose of all yoga is to detach one's sense activities from this material world. The final aims, however, are different. Jnanis want to become one with the Brahman effulgence. Yogis want to realize Paramatma, and devotees want to develop Krishna consciousness and transcendental loving service to the Lord. That loving service is the perfect stage of sense control. The senses are actually active symptoms of life, and they cannot be stopped. They can be detached only if there is superior engagement. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, parang drishtva nivartate. The activities of the senses can be stopped if they are given superior engagements. The supreme engagement is engagement of the senses in the service of the Lord. That is the purpose of all yoga. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada quotes this parang drishtva nivartate, vishaya vinivartate, niraharasya dehina. You can take someone and say, don't do this, don't engage your senses in this way. Nirahara, don't eat it or don't engage. But rasavarjam rasopyasya, we need a taste. We can't be artificially detached from the senses because the soul has senses. That's our philosophy. The soul means person means senses, and the senses, as Prabhupada said, require real engagements. And so in this purport, he's going into some detail about what the process of jnana and yoga do. You try to control your senses by withdrawing them, by a physical process, basically, or by a logical process, a process of reasoning. Not this, not that. Nope. That's not Brahman. That's not Brahman. And so in both cases, it's you doing it. It's you striving to withdraw by some process. But he says, like he says in so many places, the devotee engages his senses in the service of the Lord, and that's the way. That's the way they're supposed to be engaged. So when one does that, the parang drishtva becomes real for the yoga practitioner. It doesn't become a matter of trying. It's just a matter of accepting what's already there. Our relationship with the Lord is there. It's evoked through service. And when the service is there, the relationship it's not a matter of gyan, it's a matter of vigyan. You realize it, it's real for you. It's not just knowledge, it's not just withdrawing the senses. It's realized practical knowledge. It's knowledge you can do something with. It's not a treatise for armchair speculators. It's meant for the formation of character. And that is what happens. He says that they cannot be stopped. They can be detached only if there is superior engagement. And the superior engagement is handed to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We chant, we serve the devotees, we hear, and we do it all over again the next day. And that's the great gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maharaj, I'd be happy to hear from you if you have something to add.
The Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarane. Well, this is the common point. We may be Jnana Yogis, we may be Karma Yogis, Jnana Yogis, Bhakti Yogis, but the common point is asangata, asanga, detachment from this material world. If that's not what we're up to, then it's not yoga. Then it's rubbish. We're going to follow some sort of yoga system by which we become more deeply embedded in a better form of material existence. That's not yoga anymore. That's the opposite. But in a genuine yoga process, there'll be detachment. So that's the common point. But the Prabhupada points out, as you were rightly saying, Kendra Prabhu, that the way to be detached is to be best way to be detached is to be engaged in devotional service. Otherwise, there's this sort of forcible detachment by determination or use of intelligence, but it's not natural. The natural form of detachment is sorry, I'm doing something else. I've got something better to do. So I'm not interested in your proposition, whatever kind of Maya it may be. I have a higher taste. I have something better. So that's the position of the Bhakti Yogi.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I see Ross Prabhu there. I wonder if you might be willing to read our text 28.
Hare Krishna, yes. Can you remind me which chapter?
Yes, sir. We are in 332.
And you said 28?
Yes, 28.
Yanamatam parachiner yajayar pama nirgunam babhati antarupena rantya sabdadi dharmina. Translation. Those who are averse to the transcendence realize the supreme absolute truth differently through speculative sense perception, and therefore, because of mistaken speculation, everything appears to them to be relative. Purport. The supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is one, and he is spread everywhere by his impersonal feature. This is clearly expressed in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, everything that is experienced is but an expansion of my energy. Everything is sustained by him, but that does not mean that he is in everything. Sense perceptions, such as oral perception of the sound of a drum, visual perception of a beautiful woman, or perception of the delicious taste of a milk preparation by the tongue, all come through different senses and are therefore differently understood. Therefore, sensory knowledge is divided into different categories, although actually everything is one as a manifestation of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the energies of fire are heat and illumination, and by these two energies, fire can display itself in many varieties or in diversified sense perception. Mayavadi philosophers declare this diversity to be false, the Vaishnava philosophers do not accept the different manifestations as false. They accept them as non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are a display of his diverse energies. The philosophy that the Absolute is true and its creation is false, Brahma, Satin, Jaga, Mitya, is not accepted by Vaishnava philosophers. The example is given that although all that glitters is not gold, this does not mean that a glittering object is false. For example, an oyster shell appears to be golden. This appearance of golden hue is due only to the perception of the eyes, but that does not mean that the oyster shell is false. Similarly, by seeing the form of Lord Krishna, one cannot understand what he actually is, but this does not mean that he is false. The form of Lord Krishna has to be understood as it is described in the books of knowledge such as Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. By our imperfect sense perception, we cannot understand the form of the Lord. We have to acquire knowledge about him. Therefore it is said here, Yanam Akam. Bhagavad Gita confirms that they are fools who, simply upon seeing Krishna, consider him a common man. They do not know the unlimited knowledge, power, and opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material sense speculation leads to the conclusion that the Supreme is formless. It is because of such mental speculation that the conditioned soul remains in ignorance under the spell of illusory energy. The Supreme Person has to be understood by the transcendental sound vibrated by him in Bhagavad Gita, wherein he says that there is nothing superior to himself. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is resting on his personality. The purified absolute vision of Bhagavad Gita is compared to the river Ganges. Ganges water is so pure that it can purify even the asses and cows. But anyone who, disregarding the pure Ganges, wishes to be purified instead by the filthy water flowing in a drain cannot be successful. Similarly, one can successfully attain pure knowledge of the Absolute only by hearing from the pure Absolute himself.
Maybe we should pause there. Would you like to say something about what's been read so far?
No thanks. I'd like to hear from you, Maharaj, and others.
Jnanamekam Parachinnair Indrayai Brahmanir Gunam Alapati Artarupena Brantya Shabdadi Dharmina. The absolute, what is that? Tajganam Advayam. The absolute truth is one undivided entity, full of knowledge, and beyond the modes of material nature. But for those who are averse to transcendence, those who don't accept transcendence, see things differently. Avapati, Artarupena, in the form of various objects, Brantya, mistakenly, Shabdadi, Dharmina. They see the various sounds, forms, qualities, activities, colors, shapes. They see that all either as something to be, generally as something to figure out and exploit. Something to figure out and exploit. They're all involved with the intricacies or the broad strokes even of material existence and trying to exploit the material energy. That's the material project. And then some who are beyond that, they say, oh, it's all false. Prabhupada identified that as basically sour grapes philosophy. When I can't enjoy it, then I say it's false. So either way, I'm the first way in material life, I'm averse to transcendence entirely, and the second way, I accept transcendence, but not as the personality of Godhead. So either way, I'm speculating, either positive speculation about the material nature or negative speculation about material nature. But either way, I'm speculating, and everything appears to be relative, Prabhupada said. Either we see everything, consciousness is relative to matter, it's a product of matter, it's a property of matter. There's no separate thing called consciousness. Everything is material. This is one, what would you say, framework of materialistic speculation, and there's so many others. So this is the domain for those who reject transcendence. And for those who accept transcendence without the personality of Godhead, everything is much simpler. There's only undivided oneness. But then they're stuck with having to explain variety. And they say, well, the variety is all an illusion. But they can't explain where the illusion comes from. So Prabhupada mentions all that glitters is not gold. But that doesn't mean it's nothing. And Prabhupada gives the example of the oyster shell. The oyster shell may appear to be gold, but it's not gold, but it's not nothing. Otherwise, how do we get the appearance that it's something? So the oyster shell is an oyster shell. It's not gold, but it's something. Yeah. In this way, we have to understand. Then, yeah, so material speculation, Prabhupada says, leads to the conclusion that the Supreme is formless. And in this way, one stays under the control of the material energy. And yeah. One has to come to the personality of Godhead, then one gets clear understanding. And one can successfully attain pure knowledge of the Absolute only by hearing from the pure Absolute himself. That's the only method.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maris. There's one point that Prabhupada makes here that I seem to be coming upon this again and again in my own reading. He says, by our imperfect sense perception, we cannot understand the form of the Lord. We have to acquire knowledge about him. And this way of acquiring knowledge is so opposite to the way that materialists want and expect to acquire knowledge by the sweat of their own brow, so to speak. That the devotee acquires this knowledge by surrendering, tadvidi pranipatena. That's how the knowledge comes. But that kind of massive paradigm shift from me at the center of the universe to Krishna at the center of the universe is so absolutely distasteful to most people that they just don't want to go through this process, it seems to me. And therefore, the knowledge that we're offering that just won't take. You can tell somebody something, but they just don't want to hear it. I think of all the years that you were the questions and answers booth person at the New York Ratha Yatra and all of the people that you spoke with. Sorry I didn't come this year, but I think what fortunate people. And you've run across quite a few specimens of this sort I'm describing, I'm sure.
No end.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So Ras Prabhu, you want to pick up with the purport where you left off?
Yes. In this verse, it is clearly said that those who are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead speculate with their imperfect senses about the nature of the Absolute Truth. The formless Brahman conception, however, can be received only by oral reception, and not by personal experience. Knowledge is therefore acquired by oral reception. It is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Sastra Yomitvat. One has to acquire pure knowledge from the authorized scriptures. So-called speculative arguments about the absolute truth are therefore useless. The actual identity of the living entity is his consciousness, which is always present while the living entity is awake, dreaming, or in deep sleep. Even in deep sleep, he can perceive by consciousness whether he is happy or distressed. Thus, when consciousness is displayed through the medium of the subtle and gross material bodies, it is covered, but when the consciousness is purified in Krishna consciousness, one becomes free from the entanglement of repeated birth and death. When uncontaminated pure knowledge is uncovered from the modes of material nature, the actual identity of the living entity is discovered. He is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process of uncovering is like this. The rays of sunshine are luminous. The sun itself is also luminous. In the presence of the sun, the rays illuminate just like the sun. But when the sunshine is covered by the spell of a cloud, or by Maya and darkness, the imperfection of perception begins. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of the spell of nescience, one has to awaken his spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness in terms of the authorized scriptures.
Thank you for reading, Prabhu. We're wondering if you have any thoughts based on what you just read.
Hand it over to you, Prabhu,
All right,
Maharaj, and others.
Well, by the presence of Krishna, everything is revealed. Yaha Krishna Tahamaya Nahi Adhikar. Shastra Yonitvat. One understands from Shastra. Shastra is also the representation of Krishna. So speculation will not help us, but hearing from Shastra will help us. And there's just one thing I wanted to look at here. There's very interesting analysis here. I'd just like to read through it again because it's so interesting. The actual identity of the living entity is his consciousness, which is always present while the living entity is awake, dreaming, or in deep sleep. Even in deep sleep, he can perceive by consciousness whether he is happy or distressed. Or the way I've seen it elsewhere is that when you're in deep sleep, you're not really able to see anything, but afterwards you say, "Wow, was I out? I was, way out there." So the consciousness was there, but covered. Thus, when consciousness is displayed through the medium of the subtle and gross material bodies, it's covered. But when the consciousness is purified in Krishna consciousness, one becomes free from the entanglement of birth and death. So this presence of consciousness is so fundamental and so, what should we say, so much in need of illumination. The Prabhupada spoke at MIT and famously, and he said that in your university, there are so many departments of knowledge, but where's the department for understanding the difference between the living body and the dead body? And Prabhupada went on to say that it is consciousness, but there's no department for studying that. In the, how many years has it been since Prabhupada spoke that? Now there are some departments that are actually concerned with this, consciousness studies or becomes an actual topic with some, what should we say, at least some degree of academic respectability. I think in previous years, if you even raise the idea of consciousness being something separate, you'd be dismissed as a vitalist and shunned. But now there's some credibility to the matter. It's not so easily dismissed. So this is an area, in any case, of course, this is all relative, whether there's, more openness or less openness. Generally, everyone is thinking that the body is the self, consciousness is sort of dismissed, but there is a subject matter, or it's just a sort of sentimental idea of consciousness and of immortality. But here in the Bhagavatam, there's such a study of the difference between matter and spirit, and the two states of the living entity covered by, in which consciousness is covered by matter or uncovered by, Krishna consciousness or spiritual realization. When uncontaminated, pure knowledge is uncovered from the modes of material nature, the actual identity of the living being is discovered. He's eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's such really a clear and at the same time sublime or deep understanding. There's uncontaminated, pure knowledge. Now it's covered by the modes of nature. When it's uncovered, our actual identity is revealed or disclosed or discovered, Prabhupada says. And then what is that identity? That he's the servant of Krishna. So one may say, well, that's just now. Okay, I was with you till we got to that last step, but I'm not with you anymore. But that also, Prabhupada speaking in summary here. So, all right, if I'm pure consciousness, then what is my business as pure consciousness? And where does that consciousness come from, and so on? There's so many steps sort of left out here, or skipped over here, but dealt with elsewhere in Prabhupada's purports, so that we can probe that what comes after the colon there, that we're servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How does that follow from being consciousness? That's explained in Shastra and explained in Prabhupada's purports. So we have a lot of substance to give. It's not just sentiment. It's not just, and it's not ignorance. It's not ignorance and it's not sentiment. Sentimental spirit, not in ignorant materialism or sentimental spirituality. There's substance here for us to study and discuss.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. We're getting close to the end of our time. We have 2 items in the chat. Hopefully we can look at them and then have our closing kirtan, which Vijay Krishna Prabhu will lead, hopefully. Saraswati Mata says, Pranams, I'm not sure what it means when this statement is made here. The quote, the formless Brahman conception can be received only by oral reception and not by personal experience, unquote. I thought all knowledge about Krishna is obtained by oral reception while we are conditioned.
Yeah, that's essentially what's said here. Even to understand the formless Brahman, one has to rely on oral reception, Shastra Yoni Tvat. I don't see a contradiction here.
Good, thank you. And Tulsi Priya says, I've found that it's very hard to discuss consciousness with people who seem to think it only refers to being conscious as opposed to being unconscious, as when under anesthesia. they don't seem to understand the concept of consciousness as being the self, and that anything that is a living being exhibits some degree of consciousness.
Keep chipping away.
And Gurudas Prabhu says, Dandavats Maharaj and devotees, we have the verse Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdite directly connected to this verse. It is amazing to think about that the mental speculator actually encounters the supreme absolute truth, Haribol, but has the great, great misfortune of a poor fund of knowledge and cannot begin to appreciate his discovery properly. The demon who kidnaps beautiful women by force could momentarily claim he had achieved being surrounded by beautiful women, but cannot actually make that claim because of his brutal process.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu. And Vijay Krishna Prabhu, we would like to insist that you lead our closing kirtan.
Yes, Kendra Das Prabhu, can you hear me?
Very clearly.
What about my Miridanga?
Just as clearly.
So may I?
We insist.
Thank you very much. You're most kind. Maharaj, Jayadvaita Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, all glories to your kirtan.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. You're most kind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajacharya Ashtotar Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mayi Ki Jai, Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, for your kirtan. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for giving us your association. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj.
Jai, Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Gurudas Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Krishna
Jai
and
Maharaj.
Vijay.
Hare Krishna.